going into the industry news, of course, we're going to be talking about the strike first. Duh. It's the biggest thing happening in Hollywood. Not only is it the WGA, but as we reported last week, SAG-AFTRA is now on strike as well. Now, it's day 7 for SAG, and it's day 80 for the writers. Now, like I teased earlier, we have our friend Jared Becker joining us for this week to chat all about it. Hey, buddy, how's it going? We're super excited to have you back on the show.
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
Man, we are living the dream, just trying to figure out this world that we're living in right now, right?
Yeah, there's so
Yes.
many. It's like, how do we figure out which road to go? Oh my gosh.
Literally. The difficulty of trying to stay busy, but not trying to stay too busy because we don't
Yeah,
want to cross any boundaries or anything. But
right.
we're super excited to have you on the show today because you are our first actor, producer, and writer to come on the show since the strike has happened. And we'll just dive right in and talk all about it because I know you've been very vocal about all of this stuff on social media,
Yeah.
specifically with some AI stuff that possibly came across your path that you've are luckily enough not been able to or not gone down. So let's
Right.
start there. Like, so how did what are you feeling in your everyday life right now?
I'm so frustrated. It's well because we have so many projects in development and pre-production, and then as
Mhm.
soon as that the strike authorization went through, and even prior, because we have our director is part of SAG's Next Gen committee, so we've
Right,
been
right.
getting updates the whole time and hearing how AI is coming through and what studio executives are wanting to do, which again is its own problem. But for our project specifically, I'm like, okay, how do we not stop? How can we keep going? And it's been a little frustrating, but we've thankfully been able to move forward
Mm.
because interim agreement and just really abiding by, because there's a lot of misconception about it being a waiver and that SAG's giving waivers to people, and that's not the case. It is an interim agreement, and in order for a production to be granted that agreement, they have to comply with the proposals that SAG is provided,
Right.
Mhm.
which those are what's being proposed to AMPTP. So if A24 can abide by this proposal and this agreement, then there's no reason everyone else can't. But I'll kind of save the energy on that one for a second. But yeah, we're doing well with our projects. We've got a lot going forward.
Yeah, and
So
I think unfortunately the trades are playing heavily into this miscommunication of what it is or is not, because they're calling it waivers, right? And that is, like you said, it's incorrect, and it's an interim agreement. And if you look at it in detail, you do, and it even says in the interim agreement that once the strike is resolved, your contract it converts to the new guidelines and the new rules
yeah,
under those stipulations that you are agreeing to. So you're
yep,
automatically locked into these new guidelines
right,
based on this contract, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. And then the other thing is that I also don't think that enough people are aware of, that there are several contracts that SAG offers that weren't included in the strike to begin with, that you don't
right,
need an interim agreement for, that still allow you to work on certain projects.
yep,
Those are all available at SAG's website, the sagafter.org, and you can go into and find out what those are. And so we, like we had a bunch of stuff going on too that came to a grinding halt until we're trying to figure out what we can do or can't do, and all this stuff. And I want to talk about this a little bit too, because we're running into this problem, and I don't know how it is for you, but we're running into the problem of, we were supposed to actually be shooting in Georgia next weekend, next
oh
week.
wow,
Yeah. And so the problem that we were running into is, even with being underneath the short project agreement, the SPA agreement, and being allowed to work and allowed to do it, we're having a hard time crewing up. And even our actors, both SAG and non-union, that were attached to our project, they don't feel comfortable working because they don't want to somehow give the impression that they're willing to cross the line. And so we're running into the problem of crewing up and getting people to actually work on it, even though they're allowed to work on it. Talk about that a little bit. Are you finding that also to be the case where it's a little bit frustrating that even though you have permission, some people are just so morally set against going over the line and it's causing problems?
Right. So it's so funny. I had a call about this earlier today. A friend of mine from Sacramento reached out because their production is moving forward and it's a SPA agreement and trying to figure out their actors and how to do it. So the thing that I've dealt with, because I'm so grateful that I'm at this opportunity or point in my career, thanks to you guys at Crazy Ant Farm. So I appreciate that of getting me my jump start. Is I'm dealing with people at the level of like Mark Ruffalo.
Right.
And these big names. And so even then there's like, oh, let's support indie projects.
Right.
Let's do this. So we've had to deal with some talent, or I've talked to some people who were very much like, well, we don't want to cross the picket line. And I was like, let's define what the picket line is. And that's what I'm doing. Because I'm on this film I'm doing in the fall that we're hopefully announcing soon. It's just we're not trying to like get burnt because of the strike. I'm producing that and starring in it. And so it's the talent we have. It's reassuring. It's like, hey, this is where we're at. This is what we have. SAG is not striking against the actors. They're not striking against indie projects. They're striking against AMPTP and larger studios who have been taking advantage of people with an old system in a new modern world. So it's really just defining what are the do's and don'ts, what you can and can't do for your projects. But yeah, I mean, I get it with actors and being like, hey, we're going to look bad, or it's a publicity thing. It's like, no, you get to be the face of independent work.
Right.
Which is the new wave coming through. Like, this is the time to go get your A-listers. To go get them. Because I've talked with a lot of people's management today and be like, hey, we've got this film. It's X amount of, it's a multi-million-dollar project. We're 80% funded. Do you want to do it? And they're like, yeah, we want to work independently.
Right.
And I was like, great. So if, these A-list names are like, let's do it, other people should be able to.
Yeah. I mean, when all of this first broke and when this all started coming out, and you have people like Bob Odenkirk and all of these other A-list celebrities who are making public statements about, even if there is these stipulations, you still shouldn't cross the line. Did you have any sort of anxiety or any sort of second guesses when you were moving forward with this stuff?
I did, in two different perspectives, and I apologize for the delay. My mom was calling, but
you're fine.
So, one, looking at it as an actor, I get it, 100%.
Right.
I'm like, you're not going to screw us over. You get your money from the work that actors and writers and other creatives do. It's time for your fair share. On the producing side of it, I was like, how do we go forward with respecting everybody's decisions and what they want? And then luckily SAG came through and they're like, hey, which here's the thing, they had the same waivers in the early 2000s.
Right.
It was a waiver.
Yeah.
And so they're bringing that back. It's like, here's the interim agreement. If you can comply with this, you are good to go. It's like, great, we can comply. But yeah, I had a lot of anxiety. I have anxiety right now.
And then I like that. Yeah, I liked that you said the word respect, right? Because it is still a balancing act. Because no matter how much people understand the agreements and understand the moving forward and the willingness and wanting to be a part of indie and these things, you are still going to have those people that say, not for me. I'm sorry. I'm gonna ride this out. And you have to balance that. You have to respect their decision and say, we completely got you. We're good. Hopefully we can work together in the future. This is a thing that if this is how you stand, we're right there with you and we agree with you and all behind you. So it's finding that balance going. And I hope that you can respect me for wanting to do what I'm doing moving forward and that it doesn't, affect you working with me in the future because I chose to work on this. It's that balancing act. But our industry is always like that. It's always a balancing act of finding the right mix of, and cooperation with and the right people at the right time. And it's always like that. So this is nothing new. It's just a little bit different course to try to navigate it. But it is what it is. And I want to talk a little bit more about what's going on, though, with the fight, because it's ridiculous that most people, and I ranted on this for quite a while about the misconception that everybody has that if you are in the entertainment industry, you are somehow automatically wealthy and that you are jumping on private planes. And I went off on this. I'm like, the fact that 87% of both these unions don't qualify for their benefits because they don't make enough money, meaning they don't get enough work to qualify for their benefits, is insane. I even broke it down hourly, and it works out to something like, with the amount of time that people actually put in on a set, actors, it's not an 8-hour day, right? So I broke it down.
Right.
It works out to like $8.34 an hour. There are people flipping burgers that are making more than actors starring in high property shows or films, right? Yep. That's insane. The idea that is okay is ridiculous. And we're going to talk about it a little bit later in our industry news, but Netflix just came out and says, hey, we just made $1 billion something in profit this last quarter. And then they're on the flip side, they're trying to claim they don't have enough money to meet what the actors are asking for. Yeah. It's like, so you're bragging about the $1.5 billion quarter profit, not annual, quarter, but you don't have enough money. They're only asking for $600 million total, and you just made twice that in a quarter, and you're just one studio, but you don't have the money. And then, of course, you've got all these executives out there trying to save face because of the quote coming out about we're going to keep them out there until they're homeless. Now they're all out at every event and every opportunity to say, we want to get back to the table. We never wanted to strike. We want to do a deal. Exactly my point. It's like you can say that, but the fact is you've refused to talk for 79 days now with the writers, and so you're saying you want to go back to the table, but you're not. And what is the point of going back to the table if you're immediately going to say no to everything that is being asked for? There's no point. So
there was one instance I wanted to bring up, because I believe it was Jessica Chastain said that the majority of working class actors make less than $26,000 a year. Right. I feel like that number is very crucial. And as somebody who is on the inside, who is a SAG-AFTRA member, right now we're in day 7 and we're in day 80 for the WGA. The last WGA strike lasted 100 days, so we have 20 more days to go from the last one. And so how long do you think this is going to last? Because a lot of people are saying roughly around like 3 months for SAG-AFTRA. But I'm terrified. I'm terrified.
I see it wrapping up. I can see them getting back to the table in August.
Yeah.
And really figuring it out, because not you as in you guys, but in general, it's costing, what was the number that came out? Was it 30 million a day that LA alone is being affected by halted productions?
That's
because I had the pleasure of sitting with a bunch of economists over the weekend talking about what are the outer layer effective. So not only are you shutting down production, you're shutting down craft services, any set designers, and there's just the trickle effect.
Well, and let's go even outside of that. Like in Georgia or places outside of California where film production brings in, and those people are staying at hotels and eating at restaurants. So those local economies are suffering because those productions have been shut down. And you're right, it is $30 million a day for like overall that it's costing the state of California. But the studios themselves, and this is why I don't think it's going to last until the end of the fall either. The studios themselves, in a recent report I just saw came out, they're losing $650,000 per day per film that's been shut down. Some of these studios had, 10, 12 films into production that are now shut down. 650,000 times 12, they're losing a significant chunk of money per day by not shooting, because they're having to hold those sets, they're having to hold those locations, and they're continuously paying for those. So they like to say that the actors and writers can't hold out financially. But let's be realistic about it. The studios cannot hold out financially at that pace. They're going to start feeling the pinch. They're already losing money off of streamers, and I wish they would just come out with the numbers to prove that. I feel like they're accurate with that. And when they tell the actors and the writers, we're struggling on the streaming side, and that's why we're hesitant to pay you, There's proof of that. They just won't release it. They won't give the numbers. Right. And I feel like if you would just be transparent and come out with your numbers, you might get a little bit more leeway from the other side, because they would see that you are overall, big picture, losing money on your streaming platforms, and will be for the next decade. It's just how the infrastructure came. They came too quick, too fast, and it's not making money. It's not profitable.
Well, and it's not just streamers too. I mean, the blockbusters. They're definitely, all studios are taking baths on blockbusters right now. So that's also something that
film festivals.
Right.
A studio executive came out and said, and I it's something along the lines of, your festivals are basically fucked, because how do you promote a movie without stars? Like, you can't.
No.
They can, loopholes. They can walk a carpet. They just can't do any press about it.
Right.
You're not going to get that.
No.
I'm not going to fly somewhere just to walk.
No. Yeah. No.
It's a disaster. I see them getting back to the table in August, and then being done at the end of August. They're losing too much money.
Well, and here's the thing.
Disney stock price down to $86 a share from 200 something.
Oh, don't talk to me about Disney as a shareholder. I'm mighty upset. But I'm not a happy camper. I don't even want to discuss how much I've lost. But here's the thing, right? The money, I think that's always been the point where they could probably come to an agreement, right? Both sides, I think, are willing to concede on. The studios won't give as much as the other side wants, but the other side is willing to concede and take a little bit less. I don't think that's it's the AI issue, and right, that this is the thing. They're trying to eliminate the human aspect of the art. And you cannot do that. You cannot expect that these creators and these artists are going to allow you to remove them from the process of. To ask one showrunner to turn in a treatment and then expect AI to write the season's worth of scripts off of the treatment, and that's all you're going to pay for, or to have an actor show up and you digitize them, you get 1 day's pay, and then you use them wherever you want to. This is a huge problem. You cannot have AI generating people and generating scripts and have that be okay. And I think that is where the real negotiation is butting heads, and where the problem really is.
Right.
Yeah,
I got
it's like
insight
go ahead, Jared.
on the AI acting. It's bland acting is what it is, because it can't show extreme emotion.
No.
And which is the point, they want to use it for background people. But if you watch a lot of the because I have friends who are career background actors, and they love it. They're like, I get to do it. I don't have to do a whole. It's an easy job for some people. Some really it can be difficult for others, based on working conditions. Which I'll get to that because that pisses me off. And it's just like, how are you gonna take emotion in your background? That's what makes it. Yeah, you can have your principal actors doing the scene and really show that emotion there, because they are the focal point. But real life has layers.
Yes. And
oh my God, I forget what it is. If it's TV is about believability and film is about behavior, there's so many layers to it. If you have bland actors in the background, just not making expressions or whatever, it's like that. This is art. It's basically, it's all green screen.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. But I'm very. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's something that I feel like, it does. The world changes, right? The world evolves. It doesn't necessarily mean you want to completely fight all of AI, but you don't want it taking over jobs. That's the biggest thing. Because I was listening to a podcast the other week with a writer, somebody I believe who's on the negotiating committee for the WGA, and he's talking about, we don't want to take away AI as far as helping us with things, but we don't want it to actually take our jobs. That's the biggest thing. So I feel like, it's a double-edged sword.
Well, and on the writing side of, no, sorry, Jared, on the writing side of what you were saying about the acting side, that I'm in complete agreement on the writing side. You cannot have AI generate real dialogue or real emotion, because it's incapable. You can feed it algorithms all day long. You can feed it data, but it's never been in love and had their heart broken. It's never lost someone to death. It doesn't have that experience. And without that experience, I don't care how advanced it gets, It cannot convey that emotion. And there's the problem. It might sound okay, but it's not real. And when you start to put it all together, you realize it's just generic words. It's not emotion. And only a writer who's gone through life can write those type things. And this idea that they can somehow replace that, get rid of the writers' rooms, and just like, you can't. You cannot. The art will suffer. The content will suffer. The pocketbook will suffer. And like this idea that if this is the idea for cost saving because of all the loss at the theaters due to the pandemic and the streaming being more expensive than they anticipated, I understand the need for cost cutting. This is not the way to do it. Eliminating people is not the way to do it.
Eliminate your gourmet craft services.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe stop paying huge named actors $10 million for a 3-minute scene.
Right. Right.
There's different ways to do it. I was really shocked to see the rejection for safety.
Yeah.
And the agreement. That's what really shocked me is, I don't know, you just got to take care of your people.
Yeah.
Like that's my whole thing is take care of your people because they'll come back and take care of you.
For sure. And how many times have we talked about it? Somebody getting injured on set, somebody working 20 hours and driving home to come back, 4 hours later to start all over again. Those type working conditions are insane. You cannot expect people to function at a high level like that and not have problems, not have injuries, not have, and the idea that they just sweep it under. Oh no, that we're good there. We didn't see that. We didn't kind of you got to do better at that, right? Yeah. And I hate to say it, but I want to put this out there again because of the Danny Elfman story just recently or anything that's kind of going out there. The safety precaution of the people on set when it comes to behavior on set. People in power positions bullying people below them or harassing them sexually below them or what. It's an everyday occurrence. This isn't something, the casting couch didn't go away in the 50s. It's still there. All this kind of bad behavior is still relevant and still happening, and there's got to be safety precautions. A woman or a man should not feel uncomfortable working on a set for fear that if they say something wrong or do something wrong or they don't allow an advancement, that they're going to be taken advantage of and somehow blacklisted. There's got to be protections in place against that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And yet it happens every day. We report about it every week on the show in our industry news, something like that happening. And that's mind-boggling to me. It's like we're in the 21st century and we're still worrying about this happening to people. Like we've got to get that out there more and say this is not okay.
Yeah. I've called some people on their bullshit on certain projects because I don't like when people lie. Yeah. I don't like when it's a bait and switch and you're not transparent about things, or trying to pit people against each other.
Right.
And so I've called some people out on their bullshit, and I'm like, I'm not concerned, and I'm very grateful the career route that I chose because I'm not the person, I'm not the actor who is run of the mill who I'm auditioning for everything. Right. I've got a production company. I've got partners with stuff. And so I know what I'm making. Even if you are a run-of-the-mill actor, don't ever be afraid to speak up. Like no one's going to look out for you more than you will. Exactly. But because I did speak up against some producers, they tried to deem me like difficult to work with. And I was like, good luck, because everyone knows my character.
Right.
As Jared, everyone knows my integrity. And so and then those two people, they just, they're not working again. Well, but it's like, don't be a dick.
Exactly.
This is why we love you, Jared. This is why we love you.
And you know what? Don't be scared to burn those bridges, because the people that you burn those bridges with, like you just said, are likely never going to be able to work again anyway. The truth always comes out inevitably. They're going to realize who the bad person is and who the bad person is not. So don't be scared to burn that bridge in fear of retaliation, because even if that retaliation is attempted, it eventually will fail and you'll be okay. And you'll know that you stood up for what was right. So do that.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I know we only have a... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. But that's just the thing about having integrity on set is you know what's right. You know what you should be doing. if you have enough respect for yourself, as everyone should have respect for themselves, you
That's
know what
right.
you're going to tolerate, not going to tolerate.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Nothing's worth your peace.
Agreed. Agreed. And I know we only have a couple minutes left because you are a very busy individual. But I did want to talk a little bit about the political aspect when it comes to the president, Miss Fran Drescher. Now, at the beginning, she was kind of teetering that line, not necessarily going full force into, yes, we should strike. And, I understand you try to keep everybody at bay before getting to that point. But I feel like she's been very wishy-washy on some stuff. What are your opinions on that? I'm very curious.
Well, I am grateful to have had insight into the negotiations before, because they did a media blackout. They weren't allowed to talk about things.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the inside, we knew that we were going to strike as SAG, and we knew that's ultimately where we were going. And Fran is saying, like, no, we shouldn't be doing this. And it's like,
right.
I know she was trying to save face and not let it out so that studios could be prepared. That's the thing is SAG, and I'm not a representative for SAG. I can't speak about them of what their intentions were. Just as Jared, I can say that I think it was smart to come through and not give any inclination about it. And then ultimately, in a way, took it by surprise.
Right.
Yeah. See, that's a good point, because I didn't even think about that. I was thinking about in the sense of, her trying to maybe get that second term to try to, because, SAG has been very divided for a very long time. So, to see if she wanted to keep moving forward in this position. But that's a very good perspective. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. I think she's just doing the best she can with the resources and knowledge that she has.
Yeah.
I really loved her speech.
Fired up.
Right.
Fired
that
up.
was a good
God,
speech.
the name went off.
Yeah.
She was
For sure. And look, I mean, I think that anybody that's kidding themselves to think that divide within the union is going to go away now somehow, it's not. It's going to be like what we see in real life politics, right? Where the Democrats and Republicans come together whenever there's a major issue facing them, and they're united and woo, and then a little bit later they're right back to where they were. That's going to happen again in SAG. Fran united the union and needed to when she needed to most, but that's gonna go back to the way it was afterwards. After this is all settled, and there's gonna be fair debate back and forth about what side is right and what side isn't, who should be leading and who shouldn't be. But that's what it's all about. That's what makes everything work. If we take away that, then who are we? We have to have opposing sides. We have to have discussion. We have to have opinion, because that's how we get to compromise and make things work. So, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing that there's back and forth within the union. That's where you guys get the best stuff, is to get the back and forth and come to those agreements. So I'm hoping that's where it goes, right?
I hope so. I can see, I've heard rumors about it. Individual studios making their own negotiations.
For sure.
And I'm curious if that will happen, if they're allowed to do it, but that would be the smartest thing.
I mean, if each studio ditches the AMPTP and they do negotiate on their own for different, we're already seeing a consolidation, right? It's almost like old school Hollywood, where we're going back to the big five, right? We're already kind of seeing that consolidation. Now, if we kind of go back even more to old school, because I feel like if they make their own negotiations with the unions, then you're almost going back to contract players. Like, hey, if you agree to work for this studio, these are the rules, and we're going to sign you to this many pictures, and you're going to do this for this much money, kind of. It's almost like it's reverting back to the old studio system. Yeah. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but it certainly appears to be going in that direction.
Yeah.
They're even allowed to buy theaters now again, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's so crazy.
I'm curious to see what happens. I hope it all gets resolved and people get their fair share and what they need. And I just want to tell more good stories and distribute it to where it needs to be, because good independent stories need to be told. You know how many indies can be made with the budget of one Marvel movie? I'm not saying Marvel's bad or doesn't deserve its budget, but I'm saying if you take $250 million, my film is $3 million.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's maybe an eighth of their craft services budget.
That's what I'm saying. It pays for 2 assistants for one of their main stars, right? Like let's be honest about it. Like the money that the assistants are making on those films is absolutely insane. So and not because they're getting a decent salary, it's because there's 500 of them.
Right.
You know?
No one needs that many people.
No, it's like it's crazy. But
That's
anyway,
so funny. Well,
That's
thanks,
why I like
Jared.
Favored nations
yes.
for film projects.
There we go. I love it. Well, thank you, Mr. Jared Becker, for coming on the show and giving your insight on this, because it is very valuable. You know, we appreciate it.
For sure.
And, you know, you're always welcome.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course, Dylan.
Of course.
What?
Whoa.
What? Oh,
Who's that guy?
No, whoa, wait a minute.
Stay tuned.
But anyway, yeah, man. And hey, one more last time, like SAG-AFTRA.org, everybody listening out there. If you have any questions, if you are an actor, a writer, a director, a producer, just anybody involved thinking, are you allowed to, are you not allowed to, SAG-AFTRA.org. It will clear it all up for you.
Man, that was a good conversation. Anytime we get to talk to that man, I feel like he brings a different perspective to the table. So it's always a joy to have him on the show. I think it's either 4 or 5 times he's been on the show now.
Yeah, I think it's his fourth time, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, he always brings good insight. You know, he has a solid knowledge of the industry, right? He's not just a creative, but he also understands the business side of it. So it's always interesting to talk to him and see his perspective on how he approaches things. You know, so yeah, great conversation, man.